Scanning for audio.
Right, welcome to a Tin Dog podcast. Talking this time about Matt Smith, Year 2, Episode 12. You can call it 6B, whatever, or Series 6, Episode 12, but basically it's called Closing Time. Now, before I start on my little rants, or whatever you want to call them, I just want to say stop. Stop what you're doing right now. Because I know what you're doing. You're thinking, is the name Stormageddon already a Twitter account? Has someone on the production team or something like that, or someone who got a preview copy, sneaked out and used Stormageddon as their Twitter name? And the answer is, it's already claimed. Not by me. I did have a look. No, it's claimed by someone from years ago. Someone else had come up with the name and they're tweeting something about storms and the end of the world, possibly, and nothing whatsoever to do with Doctor Who. It's a massive shame, because it's a great, great name. It's actually one of the best things about this episode, and that's not to say that it's a bad episode by any stretch of the imagination whatsoever. I will be coming back and watching this again and again. I've already watched it a couple of times. I loved this.
Can you teach me to do that?
Probably not.
Oh, please, come on, I need something. I am rubbish at this.
At what?
Being a dad. You read all the books and they tell you you'll know what to do if you follow your instincts. I have no instinct. That's what this weekend's about, trying to prove to people I can do this one thing well.
So what did you call him? Will I blush?
No, we didn't call him the Doctor.
No, I didn't think you would.
It's called Alfie. What are you doing here anyway?
Yes, he likes that, Alfie, though personally he prefers to be called Stormageddon, Dark Lord of all.
Sorry, what?
That's what he calls himself.
Now, first off, when I'm watching this, I do kind of get a sinking feeling because we had a lovely emotional ending last week where Rory and Amy left. And then when you're watching the titles, look whose name comes up. It's Rory and Amy. And you're thinking, hang on, why are their names there? If you're going to pretend that they've left, why put their names in the opening titles? It's just a little thing, but it's a little bit annoying. Now, I don't know, because I've seen a preview copy, if this stays the same, but as far as I'm concerned, I can't see it changing. Because, yes, they're in it. But if you're trying to play the game with the audience, you know, we've not done spoilers or anything like that, why do it? Now, I know it would probably cost them an extra £2.50 to have titles without their names in, but seriously? Why? Just don't bother. And yes, they may or may not be in the Christmas special. There may or may not be one, and that's something I need to talk about before I talk about the programme, because I had a chat with my dad. And my dad is the person who introduced me to Doctor Who. He'd seen it from episode 1. Big fan. Absolutely fine. Family sharing moment. Yes, you can work out the psychological aspects of that if you really want to. However, the important bit of this is, he asked me, as if I would know, if Doctor Who was ending. If this was the end of Doctor Who. As if they weren't going to make any more. Now, my dad's a sci-fi fan. He kind of knows these things. And yet even he was thinking, they're going on and on about the Doctor dying and things like that. From a narrative point of view, that's interesting and exciting. But from an audience member point of view, from one of the outsiders, does this mean that they suspect, that although this is a complicated and exciting storyline, the Doctor may actually die, and more importantly, the series may finish? Yes, when it comes back in 2012 and again for 2013, we'll be excited and there'll be lots of advertising, but people who weren't paying that much attention or are not that interested in the River Song storyline and may have just watched a few episodes where it's been said that the Doctor will definitely 100% die, then are they not thinking, oh, this could be a repeat? Because Doctor Who finished. I know it did. They banged on about it far too long, and that's what they're doing. They're banging on about the Doctor dying. Now all that's sorted next week. Or possibly not. We won't know early. None of the podcasters or reviewers or any of the newspapers will know, because no one gets to see a review copy early at all. I know. We've had a lovely email, and basically it comes out that Moffat has decided no preview copies for this episode. Yes, we know some of what's happening, and by the end of this episode, closing time, we had a pretty good idea what was going on. Now, rather than have you hang on all the way through my review just to find out the bit at the end, yes, I know the bit you're thinking of, the bit with River's song in the spacesuit, and then have me talk about that, because that's all we really want to hear, and I know some of you out there are actually thinking that. Yes, I'll sit through the review of Closing Time just to hear his thoughts on the end. Well, I'll discuss the end now, just to make you feel better, because it's a very separate thing. It's not exactly tacked on. It's important for the overall large narrative, and it's only taken 2.5 minutes away from the storyline of this particular episode. Well, not really, because if you think about it, the Doctor is, and I'm going to go back to this, banging on about him dying and putting it off. So much so that it's just kind of not exactly spoiled this story, but it did distract you from the enjoyment of just having it as a standalone story. I just want to be a tiny bit pedantic as well before I talk about River Song. The Doctor says, I'm dying tomorrow. Now tomorrow is, I don't know, a Saturday, right? Meaning this story takes place on a Friday, and the Doctor asks for the letters to be sent out that day. No postal service on Earth could get the letters to Amy and Rory on time for them then to get in the plane, to get on the bus, to travel all the way to America when they're having that lazy afternoon watching films back in episode 1 of this series, and then get all the way to America in order to experience the lake. So that's a small pedantic problem. So perhaps when he's saying tomorrow, he actually means, I don't know, sometime next week. Could you post these and hope that the British postal system's good enough? Yeah, alright, perhaps not. Perhaps I'm just being overly critical on that one. Right. The Doctor wanders off after being given his big hat. Yes, Stetsons are cool, we get that. He then takes his long, slow stroll to the TARDIS, where the 3, frankly, spookiest children of all time are watching the Doctor. Now, is it just me, or did you think they were actually aliens about to turn on him? Possibly disguised silence or something. They were just terrifying. They were the single most terrifying thing of this whole series. 3 very scary children. Well, I think they were scary anyway. So then, their thoughts and words become reports and end up on River's desk, which is interesting, to say the least. So they're on River's desk. Now, look at her diary. It's the halfway point where the date's written down, and it's her diary. And then Madame Cavonia comes in with her eye patch and says, hello, darling. And everyone goes, that's lovely. And she goes, oh, by the way, here's the silence. They own you. Nice touch. So they haven't really been killed. So I'm guessing the silence nipped back and fixed the footage. Or at least they just hid from the human race. Or indeed hid on the moon. But that's fine. She's a doctor now, so it's the day she becomes a doctor, so you can place that in the River Song chronology. So it's before she's killed the best man she ever knew. Now it is looking more and more like that's going to be the Doctor, which is a bit disappointing because everybody else's money was on Rory, because if she killed someone... Now, and then you see her in the spacesuit. You know, I'm still thinking that the person inside the spacesuit is actually the 11th Doctor. I'm not sure how it works. I'm not sure if it works. But it looks like it's been established that the person inside the spacesuit under the lake, is River. It's pretty irrevocable. But there's still a part of me thinking that that's not quite it. I am surprised we found out at this point that that's who it is. Because it looks like episode 13 Yes, that was a Dalek you saw. Let's not go on about that, shall we? God, thrown in just for good measure, I feel. One of those victory of the Daleks as well. Sorry. I feel slightly queasy. Anyway, she's there, and she's in place. All the pieces are in place for the Doctor's apparent death. And it looks like episode 13 is the Doctor finding out why. Yes, we've been told lots of questions will be answered, and that's fine. It's a very complicated thing. And it will be elegant, and it will be marvellous, and everyone's had their own theories, and that's it. So that's episode 13, that's for us to look forward to. But I'm still not talking about closing time. And I loved it. I really, really did. These last 2 episodes have been the highlight of the series for me. I've loved them. This was a lovely comedy. I liked The Lodger. You can rewind my podcasts and play back the old one and find out how much I did like The Lodger. I like James Corden as an actor. And in this, he is definitely the straight man. And I'm not using that as a pun. He is the straight man in this. And that kid, Stormageddon, was spectacularly good. Yes, there's a lot of podcasters out there who've become fathers either recently or have been fathers a long time. And speaking just for me, because, that's all I can speak for, it really genuinely meant a lot to me, this storyline. The crisis that you first experience when you become a father was illustrated perfectly here. And admittedly, not all of us have to deal with the Cybermen in order to feel like a dad. But early on, a lot of us feel totally out of our depth, and the connection comes along. So here, Gareth Roberts really managed to show us something beautiful and something that didn't stray too far from Doctor Who. It's not a perfect story. I've got issues with the Cybermen, the same issues I've had it on and off. The Cybermat, absolutely brilliant. Nothing whatsoever to say about that, apart from they finally got the Cybermat right. It is a biological entity. It is a Cybermat. It looks like the original design, but updated. It's got the teeth, so it is bio, which the other Cybermats just weren't, apart from the ones in Big Finish. I loved that. I really did. And I'm sure that'll be a radio-controlled toy at some point. And what a brilliant one it'll be. I know I've already moaned about Amy Pond being in this story, or Amy Williams, or whatever you want. And when the kid goes up to her and asks her for the autograph, that was just weird. That was like some sort of fourth wall crossing thing. What is she in Doctor Who when she's been recognised as a companion? That just threw me. How Amy ended up in advertising is beyond me. And also, for the girl who's tired of waiting, or whatever the slogan was, is she actually in charge of the advertising company now? Is Rory still a nurse? I'm just kind of confused. This story as a whole takes us back to the Pertwee era, not in the sense that it's the unit family or anything like that. It just takes us back to the world where the Doctor is part of our world fighting new things. It's the Yeti on the toilet and tooting back. Yeah, I get it. That's great. But when Corden comes back after buying milk, puts the phone down and the Cybermats in the room, it's just great. Now, issues with the story. Where did the Cyberman spaceship come from? Wouldn't mind knowing. The council put the electrics in, that sort of activated to get that. Now, if there's a Cyberman spaceship that's crashed, which I can perfectly live with, and it's been there for ages and ages and ages, see Quatermass, then that's not a problem. Digging up the streets, disturbing the ancient spaceship, see Quatermass, that's fine. Not a problem. But they are the wrong Cybermen. They are the same Cybermen that's in space that Rory takes on. So there are Cybermen that look like that in space. That's fine, but I need to know how come our Cybermen adopt the design of the Cybermen. Scrubbing the logo off the front does not make them any less Cybers. They're supposed to be made of spare parts. Old, rickety, falling apart Cybermen, just slightly rebuilt, running on low power. Why don't they just partially convert people? Add to the horror. We've had plenty of horror in this story so far. Partially converted Cybermen always work really well in Doctor Who, and they don't just look like people wearing stupid Mickey Mouse ears. They're kind of scary, especially with bits plugged into them. That, for me, was the big thing that didn't work. What did work, of course? The doctor in the shop. So cool, being served by someone who's wild and wacky that everyone likes. And yes, I need to mention it before I move on. Linda Barron, Auntie Mabel, Captain Rack. It's all going to be alright. I would have liked some sort of line about being a pirate, if it was possible. Or at least someone reminding someone of something. But of course, the ongoing gag about them being partners and companions and that being misinterpreted by other people, it actually worked. It didn't feel like, and I'm not going to use this word lightly, an agenda. Could be, I suppose, if it makes you squirm slightly, but it worked. It worked as a comedy thing. Doctor Who, comedy and scary at the same time. That's what it is for me. That's when it works best. And this worked great. Lots of tiny little lines about adults only buying lamps. It just worked. It's great. Of course, there's the other thing you need to deal with if this is the point where the Doctor goes off. If this is the point where the Doctor goes off to become the 1100-year-old Doctor, then we still have a problem. In between this week and last week's story, 200 years have to be accounted for. At least 100 have to be accounted for somewhere. Now, I know this is a brilliant place for Big Finish to cram in a shed load of episodes at some point when they start dealing with the new series, and trust me, they will one day. If Big Finish is still around, that's what they'll be doing. And we can have some great episodes crammed in here. But it did make me wonder. I was so convinced that we wouldn't go back to the lake till at least the next series. We would have a whole extra year of padding, and we still might not. Something else may happen next week. There will be a race on next week from all the podcasters trying to get their shows out, trying to get their reviews out quickly, mainly, especially in my case, so that I can listen to everyone else's, because I never listen to other people's podcasts before I record my own, just to make sure that the opinions I've got, well, they're mostly mine. Mostly. Right, I'm going to fade away and find a way of changing my name to Stormageddon, and very soon I'll return with a new podcast about whole new things to do with the exciting and wonderful world of Doctor Who. Possibly next Saturday. Either way, be seeing you. You have been listening to the Tin Dog Podcast. Doctor Who and its associated shows are all trademark of the BBC. No infringement is intended. Contact us at tin-dog@hotmail.co.uk.